I want to tell you something I have never told anyone in full. Not my mother, not my therapist, not even my closest friend.
Who held me the night I came back and watched me shake for 3 hours straight without being able to explain why. I am telling you now because I need someone to know. And because part of me believes that if I say it out loud, all of it, maybe it will finally stop following me into my sleep. It has been 4 years, and I still cannot stay in a house alone. Before I tell you what happened next, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share this story with someone to be careful what doors you open, and be more careful about the ones that open for you. Now, let me tell you what happened that day.
My name is not important. What matters is who I was at 23. I was broke in the specific way that young people are broke when they are too proud to ask for help. I had just finished my undergraduate degree in literature at a small university in Vermont, and I had moved to Portland, Maine, chasing the idea of a writing career that had not yet decided to chase me back. I was renting a room in a shared house with 4 other people, surviving on freelance editing work and the occasional barista shift. I was also lonely, not in a dramatic way, just in the quiet, slow way that creeps up on you when you are in a new city and you realize that everyone around you already has their people, their routines, their inside jokes, and you are still on the outside looking in. So when I saw the listing, I thought it was exactly the kind of opportunity I needed. It appeared on a local community board, not online, which I thought was charming at the time, an actual printed card pinned to the board outside a coffee shop I used to work at. The handwriting was neat and careful, like someone who had learned to write in a different era. House sitter needed, October through November, remote property, full amenities provided, generous compensation, references required, solitude preferred. There was a phone number at the bottom. I photographed it and called that same evening. The woman who answered was named Mrs. Aldrich. Her voice was soft but precise, the kind of voice that does not waste words. She told me the property was in rural New Hampshire, about 40 minutes outside of a small town called Harwick. She and her husband were traveling to Europe for 7 weeks and needed someone responsible to stay in the house, collect mail, maintain the heating system, and care for the grounds. The pay was $900 a week. For someone in my position, that was not money, that was salvation. She asked for references. I gave her 2. She called them both within the hour and called me back before I had even finished eating dinner. "You'll do," she said simply. "I'll send directions." Looking back, I should have asked more questions. I should have asked why they did not use a professional service, why the listing was handwritten and not digital, why she had asked specifically for someone who preferred solitude. But I did not ask. I said yes. I said thank you. And 2 weeks later, I drove my old Honda Civic through the winding roads of rural New Hampshire with a bag of books, a laptop, and the specific excitement of someone who did not yet understand what they were walking into. I arrived on a gray afternoon in early October when the leaves had just turned and the sky was the color of old pewter. The house appeared at the end of a long gravel driveway, and my first sight of it stopped me from breathing for a moment. It was enormous. That is the only word that captures it honestly. Not elegant in the way that old estates sometimes are, not warm or stately, just enormous. 3 stories of dark stone and timber with narrow windows that caught no light, surrounded by old oak trees so tall they seemed to be holding the sky down. There was a small formal garden to the left, now dying quietly into autumn, a separate garage, a stone wall enclosing the property on all sides. Mrs. Aldrich was waiting at the front door when I pulled up. She was older than I had imagined, perhaps 70, thin, dressed in muted colors, with silver hair pulled tightly back. She smiled when she saw me, but it was a careful smile, the kind people wear when they are performing warmth rather than feeling it. She showed me through the house efficiently, room by room, like someone conducting an inspection rather than a welcome. The kitchen, the sitting room, the library, which was lined floor to ceiling with books and made my heart ache with wanting. The guest room on the second floor where I would be sleeping. the boiler room in the basement, which she showed me how to maintain with very specific, very firm instructions. "Do not touch anything else in the basement," she said, and she said it the way people say things when they expect you to agree without question. I agreed without question. There was a door at the far end of the basement hallway. Narrow, wooden, old. It had a padlock on it. "Storage," she said, before I even looked at her. She had been watching for me to notice it. Her husband, Mr. Aldrich, appeared only briefly. He was taller than her, also elderly, and he said almost nothing. He shook my hand with a grip that was still firm, looked at me with pale eyes for a moment longer than felt comfortable, and then said, "Be careful with the house." I thought he meant be careful of the antiques, the old furniture, the fragile things. I did not understand what he meant until much later. They left the following morning before I woke up. I found a handwritten note on the kitchen table with emergency numbers, instructions for the heating, and a reminder about the mail. At the bottom, in slightly different ink, as if added as an afterthought, were 4 words: "Do not explore unnecessarily." I put the note in a drawer and made myself coffee and stood at the kitchen window looking out at the gray October garden, and I felt something I had not felt in a long time: peace, or what I thought was peace. The first week was genuinely beautiful. I wrote more in those 7 days than I had written in the previous 3 months. Something about the silence of that place, the weight and completeness of it, unlocked something in me. I sat in the library for hours. I cooked simple meals and ate them slowly. I walked the grounds in the afternoons, crunching through fallen leaves, breathing cold air, feeling more like myself than I had in years. The house was cold, even with the heating running. Not uncomfortable, just cool in the way that old stone holds cold even against warmth. I wore sweaters and thick socks and did not think much of it. The first thing I noticed was the sounds. Old houses make sounds. I knew this. Pipes, settling foundations, wind finding gaps in old windows. I expected sounds. But on the third night, lying in the guest room reading, I heard something that made me lower my book. It was not a creak. It was not the wind. It was a rhythm, slow, deliberate, like footsteps coming from the room directly above me. I stayed very still and listened. The sound continued for perhaps 30 seconds, slow, measured, back and forth, and then stopped. I waited. Nothing. I told myself it was the house settling, that old structures expand and contract with temperature changes in ways that can sound deliberate. I told myself this firmly and went back to my book. But I did not sleep well that night. The second thing I noticed was the doors. I had developed a habit of leaving certain doors open, the library, the sitting room, the door to my bedroom, because the closed-up quality of the house felt oppressive at night. I preferred to see the hallway, to feel connected to the larger space. But I started finding them closed. Not every morning, maybe every other morning. I would come downstairs and the sitting room door would be shut, or the library, or I would wake in the night to find my bedroom door closed when I was certain I had left it open. I checked the windows, I checked for drafts. I found nothing that could explain it. On the 6th day, I found the door to the basement standing open. I had not opened it, I was certain of that. I had not been to the basement since Mrs. Aldrich showed me the boiler, and I had no reason to go. But there it was, open, the darkness below it like a held breath. I closed it. I stood there for a moment with my hand still on the handle, and then I heard it, from somewhere below, a sound like someone exhaling slowly. I told myself it was the boiler, air moving through pipes. I told myself this, and I backed away from the door, and I went to the kitchen, and I made tea, and I sat with both hands around the mug until they stopped shaking. By the second week, I had stopped writing. The creative peace I had felt in the first days had curdled into something else, a low, constant unease that sat in my chest like a stone. I tried to work at the library desk and found myself stopping every few minutes to listen, to look at the doorway, to watch the shadows in the corners of the room. The whispers started on day 9. I was in the kitchen washing dishes when I heard it for the first time, so faint that I genuinely thought I had imagined it, a sound almost like a voice, almost like a word, but not quite either. It seemed to come from the wall beside me. I turned off the faucet and listened. Silence. I turned the faucet back on. The sound came again. Low, rhythmic, almost like someone murmuring, like someone speaking in another room through a thick wall. I went through every room on the ground floor. I checked outside. I checked the basement door, which was still closed. I found nothing. No radio left on, no open window letting in sound from somewhere distant. I called my friend Lena that evening, and I tried to make it sound casual. I told her the house was old and making strange sounds. She laughed and told me old houses were all the same, and asked if I had found any good books in the library. I said yes and changed the subject, and did not tell her what I was really feeling, because what I was really feeling was that the house was aware of me. I know how that sounds. I am a rational person. I studied literature, not folklore. I do not believe in haunted houses the way people in films believe in them, dramatically and all at once. But there is a difference between not believing and not feeling. And what I felt increasingly in every room of that house was that something knew I was there, that something was paying attention. The mirror in the upstairs hallway bothered me most. It was large, ornate, hung at the end of the hall outside my bedroom door. Old glass, slightly warped, the kind that gives reflections of particular quality, soft at the edges, slightly unfocused. I had walked past it dozens of times. On the 10th night, I woke at 2 a.m. needing water. I went out into the hallway, and in the darkness, I looked at the mirror before I turned on the light, and I saw something in the reflection that was not me. It was only for a second, less than a second, a shape, darker than the darkness, standing just behind where I stood. I turned on the light immediately. I was alone. I stood there for a long time looking at the mirror, at my own pale reflection, at the empty hallway behind me. My heart was hitting my ribs so hard I could feel it in my throat. I went back to bed and did not get up again until morning. On day 12, I decided to leave. I am not ashamed to admit that. Whatever pride I had about being capable and rational and practical, it dissolved that morning as I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee going cold and thought clearly and honestly about what I was experiencing. I was frightened, not of anything I could explain, but frightened in a way that had settled into my bones and would not come out. $900 a week was not enough. Nothing was enough. I packed my bag. I put my laptop in its case. I put my books in the canvas tote I had brought them in. I carried everything downstairs and I put it by the front door. I put on my coat. I picked up my keys. I opened the front door, and I stood there looking out at the gravel driveway, and something happened that I have spent 4 years trying to find a rational explanation for. I could not move. Not in the way that fear freezes you. This was physical. I was standing in the open doorway with my keys in my hand and my bag at my feet, and I could not make myself step forward. My body simply would not do it, like standing at the edge of something with your weight going the wrong way. I stood there for what felt like minutes, and then, slowly, I stepped back inside. The door swung shut behind me. I stood in the entryway looking at it, and then I turned around and looked at the house, the hallway, the staircase, the dim light coming through the narrow windows, and I had the sudden, terrible, absolute conviction that the house had just decided something, that it had been waiting to see what I would do, and now it knew. That night was the worst. It began at midnight, which I know because I was watching the clock on my phone, lying rigid in bed, with every light in my room on, listening. The footsteps above me started again, but this time they were not measured or slow. They were urgent, back and forth, fast, like someone pacing, like something pacing. Then the whispers came, and for the first time they were not coming from the walls. They were coming from directly outside my bedroom door. I could not make out words, but the sound was unmistakably voice-like, low, continuous, intimate, the way someone sounds when they are speaking very quietly to someone standing right next to them. I held my phone and thought about calling someone, but I could not think of what to say. There are whispers outside my door, and what would anyone do with that? What could anyone do? I got up. I do not know why. Later, when I tried to understand my own actions that night, I thought it might have been the same impulse that makes you press on a bruise, not because it doesn't hurt, but because some part of you needs to confirm that it is real. I opened the door. The hallway was dark. I had left the hall light on before I went to bed, and it was now off. The only light came from my room behind me, a yellow rectangle reaching into the dark. The whispers had stopped, and at the end of the hallway, in front of the mirror, there was a shape. Not quite a person, not quite solid, but the outline of a figure, standing, facing the mirror. And in the mirror, I could see this clearly. I was looking right at it. The reflection was facing me. I did not scream. I could not. The sound simply would not come. I watched the shape for 5 seconds, 10 seconds. It did not move. The reflection did not look away. Then I stepped back into my room and slammed the door and pushed the heavy chair from the corner against it and sat on the floor with my back against the bed, and I did not move until light came through the curtains. In the morning, the hallway was empty. The light was on. The mirror reflected nothing but the hallway and the pale morning coming through the far window. But when I looked closely at the mirror, when I made myself walk to it and look, I saw something that turned my legs to water. There were handprints on the glass, on the inside, not on the surface, inside the glass itself, like they were pressed from within the reflection. Small hands, pressed flat, several of them. I got in my car and I drove, and this time, whatever had held me the day before did not hold me. I drove until I hit the highway, and I kept driving until I reached Portland, and I sat in the parking lot of a gas station, and I finally screamed. Just once, just to let it out. I called Mrs. Aldrich from that parking lot. She answered on the second ring. I told her I had left. I told her I was sorry. I stumbled through the explanation, and even as I was speaking, I could hear how it sounded. Footsteps, whispers, a shape in a mirror, and I waited for her to be confused or dismissive or irritated. She was none of those things. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Did it let you leave?" I did not understand what she meant at first. I said yes, eventually it did, on the second day I tried. She was quiet again. "You were lucky," she said. I asked her what she meant. I asked her what was in that house. She said, "The house is very old. Some things that live in old places do not understand that people have a right to leave. They remember when they didn't." I asked about the locked room in the basement. She said, "That door stays locked. That is all I will tell you." I asked her if she had known when she hired me that the house was like this. There was a pause, and then she said, "Why do you think I needed someone who preferred solitude?" She said she would mail my payment for the 2 weeks I had stayed. She said, very softly, "I am sorry. I hope you find your way to being well." And she hung up. I did not go back for the money. I want to be clear about that. She mailed it anyway. A cashier's check in a white envelope, no note inside. I deposited it and spent most of it on my first month seeing a therapist who was kind and thorough and who helped me find language for what I had experienced. Trauma response, sleep disruption, an old house with pipes and settling foundations, and an overactive imagination belonging to a lonely young woman who needed more sleep and less isolation. I let her say those things. They were partially true, but they were not the whole truth. And I have thought many times about what Mrs. Aldrich said, about things that live in old places, about houses that remember when people did not have the right to leave. I think about curiosity, my own particular brand of it, the kind that always wants to look one more time, to stay one more day, to understand one more thing. It was curiosity that made me take the job, curiosity that made me open my door that night. Curiosity and loneliness are dangerous together. I know that now. Loneliness makes you say yes to things you should say no to, because the alternative is another day of nothing, and nothing begins to feel worse than anything. I think about the handprints inside the mirror glass. I have thought about them almost every day for 4 years. Whose hands were those? How long had they been there? Had there been someone before me, someone who tried to leave on day 12 and did not make it past the front door? I do not know. I will never know. And I have made peace with not knowing, or something close enough to peace that I can live inside it. What I cannot make peace with, what still finds me in the dark, quiet places, is the question Mrs. Aldrich asked me. Did it let you leave? Not did you leave, not were you able to go. Did it let you? Because she knew, and I know now, that I did not leave because I was brave or clever or because I found the right solution. I left because something in that house, for reasons I will never understand, decided I could go. And sometimes, on quiet nights, in the particular stillness between 2 and 3 in the morning, I wonder what would have happened if it had decided differently. I wonder if I would still be there, standing in that hallway, facing the mirror, learning slowly what it means to be on the other side of the glass.